Hello, this is BoF Live. I'm Tim Blanks, and we're talking to Sam McKnight today. This is my very first Zoom, so forgive me if I'm inept in my Zooming. But Sam and I have known each other for many years in so many different capacities, and it's extraordinary that in this extraordinary time, I mean, it's appropriately extraordinary in this extraordinary time that we get to talk together like this. So, Sam, hello.
Hello, Tim. How are you?
I'm good. I'm
Good.
I'm just nervous, and I feel I've got butterflies all the time. This situation, the world is just making me incredibly nervous. But the sun is shining, and the garden looks beautiful, and I know that your garden is your happy place.
Yeah, it is. I'm very lucky to have that. I realize how lucky I am to have that. I really do. That I'm not stuck in a flat with lots of children, and you know, I mean, I really feel for some people it must be really, really tough. But I mean, being very selfish, I've been alone for what, 8 days, something like that now, day 8. But I've taken a leaf out of my garden, if you like. I have slowed down, and I feel like I'm not fighting it. You know, it will be over, and I'm actually really enjoying the not traveling, the whole slowing down process, because, you know, taking a leaf out the garden, as I said, and I'm repeating myself already. When you are a gardener, when you are involved in a garden, it gives you a different perspective on things. There are seasons. The seasons sometimes are very slow to emerge, but the seasons always come. So there's a lot of hope there.
And what an incredible lesson for fashion, that if we slow ourselves to a natural rhythm, there's a future. There's a very different kind of future from the future we would have imagined 3 or 4 months ago, where everyone was stuck in this incredible cycle of just, you know,
this crazy old merry-go-round.
Creation, consumption, you know.
Yeah.
And having that garden that you have, which is one of the wonders of West London, to be able to step out into that and see all that beauty just coming up in a natural sort of, you know, man had nothing to do with that. That's all nature.
Well, it's not all nature.
Of course.
It's nature. It's nature and nurture. There's a lot of nurturing.
There's something about having a garden which just seems so like everything you've ever learned in your work, you can turn and
marry it together. Yeah.
Externalize in this. So your garden becomes, when you're long gone, your garden will be a monument to the art of hairdressing. My cocktail, what can I say?
Oh dear, yeah.
But getting to the work, where were you in your professional life when COVID-19 interrupted the rhythm of the world?
Well, we were actually just coming to the end of Fashion Week, weren't we, in Paris? Because we'd been in Milan, and then we came to Paris, and I think I did 1 day's work after that, and that was it.
When did you become aware of this insidious thing that was settling over us? At what point during the season did it become clear that we were about to deal with this complete catastrophe?
Well, we were quite clear I remember from the beginning of London Fashion Week, because at the beginning of London Fashion Week, I was actually saying I would be very surprised if Milan and Paris go ahead, but they did go ahead.
And what was your feeling about that? Did you think that was kind of
well, like everyone else, it's in retrospect, it's easy to say, oh, but in fact, at the time, you think, well, okay, they know what they're doing. It's fine, you know.
Yeah.
It's okay. I mean, it's definitely this thing is really big. This thing that's happening in China is really getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Is this the right thing? And we had to see a doctor before we went into the Chanel show, and then it seemed a little more serious. And after that, it moved pretty quickly.
But it's an odd feeling. It seems to me that for a few seasons now, there's been a cloud over fashion, and
you think how do you mean?
I feel financially, I mean economically, the industry was challenged, and you kept hearing about businesses not doing well, and there was a little bit of smoke and mirrors happening. You know, I think that's always been a condition in fashion, that it is an industry that presents an image of
well, that's what it's about. It's about image.
Yeah, confidence and beauty.
Yeah.
And it hasn't, obviously that's not always the case. But it did feel to me, in my capacity, that things were just getting a little bit more twisted and complicated, and there was a sort of Darwinian thing beginning to emerge, that these businesses would survive, these businesses wouldn't. Department stores weren't doing well, this store was doing well, that store wasn't doing well, this designer, that designer, you know, and this is what people love now. It's all about social media, whatever. All the goalposts are kind of moving all over the place.
Yeah.
And then when this happened, it did feel to me a little bit like, you know, I think for a long time people have felt something's coming, you know, with the climate crisis.
Do you think people have wanted something to come?
Well,
it's not just a feeling. Maybe is a general something needs to give here.
Yes.
I've been saying for a while. I mean, this is my age too. I've been saying for a while that it's beginning to me to feel repetitive. You know, is that there's the shows, the magazines come in every 3 months, which 3 months, which is already dated, but there's a kind of repetition, and you feel for a while that there needs a feeling of recalibration somehow.
Well, the reset, that's what, you know.
The reset, yes, the reset. The same as I keep equating it to my garden, but it's kind of, you know, in winter things die down, and then things grow back. So there's always that constant feeling of renewal, and I'm being very positive about this and feeling that what I'm going to take away from this whole period is a definite feeling of renewal. And I think that's probably what's going to happen.
The necessity.
And that needn't be a bad thing, you know?
I think that what so many people were saying is that there was just too much. It had all become so excessive. And I agree with that there was a sense of an unsustainable, when people
it's interesting to hear you using the past tense. There
yes.
was.
Yes.
Yeah. So
which is my weird optimism. It's my weird optimism.
Well, but I think that's amazing. I think that's really great, because that suggests hope and renewal to me.
I think we're a long way from that. I think there's quite a dark period to go through before we actually.
But I think having those thoughts of hope and renewal at the end of that is we need that too.
I want to talk to you about that after I finish that thought about the sense of the unsustainability of fashion, all of it, the exploitation of natural resources, the whole image making machine, the content generation, this distracting, this thing that just seemed to be designed to distract people from what we needed to be thinking about. And fashion was coming around to that with discussion of things like circularity and localization. Localization now seems incredibly relevant for the fashion industry, with everybody's far-flung production facilities closed down. You just see that, you know, we might be reaching a point where people can only work local. People will only be able to work locally. Well, I've been saying for years that, you know, it's going to be about tailors, dressmakers, and cobblers in your village. But that is my very kind of post-apocalyptic vision of not just fashion, but the world. The idea of the optimistic aftermath of all of this. You know, I just said to you, if we don't have things like extravagant fashion shows, the image-making machine of fashion might revert to things like magazines, the way it used to be. Now, you weren't so sure about that.
I'm not really ever a great believer of things going back to how they were. You know, I don't.
Yeah, I use the word back. I should say forward. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, going forward, there's definitely room for new ways of looking at things. That's for sure. But I don't know. I feel that the magazine thing is really dated now. It is, and of course there's room for it, but maybe not how.
Why
we knew it.
Dated? Why do you think it's dated?
I've been kind of really. What can I say? You have the feeling that lots of things just look the same, you know? That goes all the way through it. And I think I'd be really interesting to see how the film world develops after this, because I think fashion films have been trying to be really, really interesting for a long time, but they haven't quite hit the button. Like, you keep thinking back to the sort of glory years of film when it first began 100 years ago, or you know, the turn of the last century, 100 odd years ago, and you feel like the fashion world the fashion film world needs an awakening. Does that make sense? Because I don't feel. Sorry.
In the way that the fashion illustration world could be revisited, in the way that, no, I think that just the general idea of the fashion image, you know, you say all magazines look the same. That's because all magazines focused on the same outfits that were released by the same designers.
Yeah. Listen, that's a big sweeping statement. All magazines don't look the same, but the medium of magazines is, you know, it's been the same for many, many years. And it's maybe about some group of young people coming along and creating a new medium. Maybe just isn't the still image.
Well, because I love, you know, if you look at the glory days of Harper's Bazaar or the Franca Sozzani's Italian Vogue, or when fashion image making was pure, and it was about gorgeous images, almost whatever the actual piece of clothing was almost irrelevant to the art direction and the photography and the pose and the sort of perfect representation of what people call the fashion dream. I could imagine, and hair and makeup was an art, and you know, you were part of all of that.
But all those things are still, they're still incredibly creative.
But I could see a rebirth rather than going back. I could see a renaissance of it, especially if we don't have the more kind of conventional content generator like the fashion show. If that does happen to change, that whole situation has to change. I could see fashion film. I could see a lot of things running along the same tracks, but I do love a really fantastic fashion magazine.
Oh yeah, me too. And I love a fantastic fashion show. So maybe everything needs to be more distilled and less I don't know, you feel that you almost want a new sort of new aspiration, and almost a new exclusivity, such a sort of dirty word these days, but there's something about the old order that was a very beautiful thing, that you couldn't actually have something, so it was aspirational.
Yes.
But it's almost been so democratized that it's worthless. Does that make sense?
Oh my God, this is what I find more and more conversations with designers, with photographers, whatever, that whoever, the notion of restoring the idea of preciousness to fashion, that it's not this enormous, I want it now, I'll have my £1 bikini, I'll wear it, I'll throw it out, that all of that insane waste and exploitation, that if you bring back the notion of value and you refresh people's memory about what
value, that's the word.
About what value means, that value is craft, value is imagination, value is ingenuity, value is creativity, that value is something you treasure. It's precious, and a piece of clothing can embody all of that, because it's actually something. It's all about, people have been talking about the hand, the human hand a lot. Don't you find that and the kind of idea of craft has been reborn
that's been happening for a while.
A while.
That's been coming for a while.
And then you have something like this, which completely, like COVID-19, completely spotlights that, But I think that for people like you and all the wonderful makeup people you've ever worked with, and the work you did in those teams, the idea of the contribution, the notion that fashion is a collaborative thing, something that you all shared in those incredible moments when you were traveling around the world with amazing photographers and amazing models.
But that still happens, Tim. There are really incredibly talented young hair and makeup people and young photographers out there at the moment.
Absolutely. And stylists, and
I mean, I think there's a wave of these guys that will see us through whatever happens after this, and a wave of even younger ones to come. But I think what's sad is this sort of the excess and disposability of things that has happened recently. But I feel that was kind of coming to an end anyway, because like you said, everyone is bored of it. Everyone kind of had enough of it. And fashion thrives on boredom, on to the next. But in the past, the previous stuff hasn't been quite so disposable. It's been more of an evolution rather than a sort of, yesterday's fashion magazines are tomorrow's chip papers. I'm not explaining myself very well.
No,
the disposability of it is kind of disgusting.
But that's kind of what was happening with everything. That the speed of everything was the whole notion of the left behind. That's what's been so big in populist politics. The left behind, the left behind, having their voice, and that's all about this ridiculous entropic speed that society moves so fast that eventually it just stands completely still. And then actually what COVID-19 has done has stopped everything. And
maybe it will make the world appreciate special things, appreciate handcrafts, appreciate beauty, appreciate how beauty is created, how it should be treasured,
Oh, I mean, I couldn't have said that better. But at the same time, we know that there are hedge funds making billions of dollars from betting on the collapse of our economy.
Of course.
That to me is pure evil. That human greed is still sucking the light and the life out of everything. I mean, that's the change that's the sort of fundamental change I would love to see, that somebody who has $1 trillion doesn't feel compelled to make another $1 trillion,
Yeah.
you know? Because everybody's going to die.
At the expense of someone else's $1 trillion. Yeah.
But what the $1 trillion could do for the trillion people who have nothing and who
of course.
Yeah, it's a complete nightmare. Where fashion sits in that is an interesting situation, because what do we rely on fashion for?
I've always relied on fashion for inspiration and joy, you know. I mean, you know, when I would buy lots of fashion in the 80s, I mean, buying the new Gaultier jacket would bring you joy every time you wore it, and you'd wear it a lot, you know. And do people still get that? Do you still get joy from buying something? I mean, but then you would buy something like that once a season or once or twice a season.
It was precious,
and there weren't very many of them. You know, it wasn't massive.
You were the only person who had it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and that is the idea that we're talking about restoring. You know, bringing back the notion that that's something that people have worked on, that thought about, you know, created with other people,
and it didn't necessarily look like something else that they'd torn out of a magazine from 40 years ago. It really was a new way of looking at things. And and that's what's so great about fashion, because it can actually show you things in a new way. It can give you a new way of looking at something, you know?
And I think that will be incredibly important in the months or years to come. Don't you think that we will be needing to?
I do. I think it's going to be a really exciting time. Yes, there are going to be dark days and dark periods, but I mean, you got to always look on the bright side of life, really, don't you?
Well,
I mean, fashion also is the eternal optimist, isn't it? I mean, the fashion magazines
has to be
in throughout history have brought optimism and joy through the letterbox or on the newsstand. That's what they've been selling.
And even if you didn't have access, that's what was always so interesting, is that even if you didn't have access to what you were looking at, it was still wonderful to look at it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that a little bit of that has been lost, and that's a challenge to restore that. But I did want to ask how you feel about the way. How you feel about hairdressing's place now, as probably the best known hairstylist in the world, and the man who has you see me blowing smoke. You know.
Oh yeah. Sure.
How do you feel about where does hairstyling sit now in the whole fashion? How were you feeling about it before this happened? And what could you see happening to it? I mean, if I just give you a prompt, I'm thinking that the craft of what you do will be respected in a new way, because
it's something that's not going to be done by a machine. Anyway. It's not going to be done by a machine or a computer anytime soon. So, I mean, the little hands of hair and makeup are going to be needed. They're not going to be disposed of. And I was saying to a friend of mine who has a salon the other day, because I keep seeing all these people talking about cutting your own hair, and women getting really panicked and stressed about how they should cut their own hair. We're only locked down for a week or a few days, and you let it grow for a bit. Take a chill pill. Don't get stressed. I mean, do not get stressed about cutting your own hair, because if you cut your own hair, it's a disaster. The stress will be much worse. Just relax, just chill. And these hairdressing salons are going to be so busy after this lockdown. There's going to be a hairdressing boom, because people can't do their own hair. There will be always a need for hair and makeup stylists for the whole team on a fashion shoot.
Is this the rebirth of the Tony Home perm then?
I don't know. You need to talk to L'Oreal or someone about that.
Remember you used to talk about those tight little perms that your mum and all her friends had, the tight little curly perms that everybody had at a certain time in the past. My mum had one.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah.
But what you just said that about doing your own hair. It's gone. It's gone. It just goes, doesn't it? Just goes.
Well, it's not something. It's not something that you can that is going to be replaced by a machine or a computer anytime soon.
See, my
so we're still going to have a job.
You on March 21st, you reposted an Instagram by a woman called Lucy Johnson. She was calling out the government, the British government, for not really including services like hairdressing in what were not necessarily essential services, but honest, honorable services to the community.
And the beauty industry is a massive industry in this. It brings in billions. It generates billions of pounds. And someone asked me to, I didn't know Lucy Johnson, but someone asked me to repost it. And I read it and agreed with it. And I reposted it. And then Naomi reposted it. I mean, now there's a woman who supports the hair industry, you know, always has done. And I thought, Naomi, please, if you feel like it, repost it. And she did straight away, bless her. And so because beauty it's crucial to some people. Okay, it may not be life or death, but it really is a crucial part of people's life. People spend a lot of money on beauty, and a lot of the beauty industry is self-employed. And the day when I posted that had not been addressed by the government, but it was very quickly after that.
And so the comments from people who were losing their businesses and so on, now there's a better feeling in the community than how much of a community is hairdressing? Sorry? How much of a community is hairdressing?
Oh, it's a really incredible network and community. There's an incredible camaraderie between hairdressers and rivalry too. If you ever go to the hairdressing awards, you'll see that in real life.
And how do they treat you? Are you the Yoda of hairdressing or?
Oh, I don't know. I'm the old man of hairdressing, that's for sure. But I mean, I've never really been, because of what we do. We don't work in salons. We're quite alone. You know, we're not working with how can I explain? We're not in the hairdressing industry. So it's only recently that our photo shoot branch of the beauty industries has been kind of included in that world. And that's a lot of thanks to Catherine Hancock, who started Creative Head magazine a few years ago and merged the salon world and the photo shoot world together. And I think that she's done that magnificently. But the industry has grown enormously. I mean, when I started doing this, there were probably 6 people in the world who did it, maybe 10. And now there are literally thousands. So it wasn't really an industry then. You know, how many fashion shows were there in a season? 20, not that many, I don't know, if that. And now it's this huge, monstrous merry-go-round monster that people can't get off. So, sorry, diverging a little bit there.
Because what happens now with COVID-19? What happens to hairdressing? You said there are thousands of people. There are thousands of livelihoods.
Yeah, there are. I don't know. This is a little bit of a worry. So, but I think I don't know what's going to happen to the fashion world and the photo shoot world. Let's see what happens, because we're only 10 days into this thing. So I don't want to make any sort of predictions because we don't know. but I keep getting options for things. People have been very optimistic. So I keep getting options for shoots that are probably not going to happen. But so people are kind of trundling along. And I think people in the salon business, I would imagine the salon business will be booming when we go back, because people will be rushing to the hairdressers like never before. So I don't know. Let's see how it goes. I don't know.
What a perfect moment for a before and after story, that when everybody comes racing back from their
so good, no? Yeah,
to the salon. So this, you are being very optimistic. This is potentially an opportunity in a way that ideally for everybody who works in fashion, for everybody who has ever been making beautiful things, styling beautiful things, making sure that they look as good as they possibly can for, the global audience. This might remind people of what they love about fashion, that when they are, I mean, how long is it, say there was an enormous lockdown and you say you have options now, presumably you've been working right up to this point. So you've been doing hair for fashion shoots that will be coming out over the next, how much do magazines have in the bag then, if this goes on?
I don't know, but I know I had options for 4 major campaigns after the shows, and not one happened. Not one. So I guess there's going to be a shortage of campaigns this season, which makes me think maybe there'll be a shortage of magazines. I don't know. I'm not. You'd have to ask Edward Daniel about that. You'd have to ask Edward. But I think that you know what? Edward's doing such a great job. These guys will rise to the occasion. I just wonder if there'll be a lot of stuff that doesn't make it.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff that doesn't, and that's sad.
And there's also the interesting point that if people get used to not looking at fashion in the way they were used to looking at it, whether they will fall out of the habit of looking at it in that way, whether all the things that we have
there's a lot of small independent magazines that really operate on a shoestring, now, but maybe they'll be okay because they operate on a shoestring. Maybe they'll be fine, and people will still work for free and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It will definitely be it'll be a great leveler, won't it? Really?
Yeah, for everybody, everything.
For
Have you ever thought of it as a moment where you could just say, you know what, I love my garden. I don't want to live with this stress anymore. I could happily go and potter for the rest of my life. And
oh no, I'd be really bored. Yeah, I mean, I think for me now, this period, it's showing me more than ever that it's about balance. It's what I said last week to someone, it may have been you, was it's about fine tuning. And sometimes I think, okay, why are we running around chasing our tails with working 7 days a week, sometimes 14, 16, 18 hours a day? Do we really need to do this? Does everyone really need to do this? And there's a kind of movement recently in some countries of working a 4-day week and having 3 days off, which I'm thinking maybe this is a way forward. Maybe it's not about the old Andy Warhol saying about pop eating itself. Maybe we should stop eating ourselves and wake up and smell the flowers. Take a bit of time to do things for yourself and for your family. And sorry,
you have the flowers to wake up and smell.
I do, but I know I grow my own vegetables, which I'm just planting seeds now, and maybe it's about balance. That's all you can strive for, really.
Is it something as fundamental as rediscovering our humanity, do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. Because we've kind of become machines, haven't we, really?
So fashion will change.
It was changing anyway, but this will push it on much faster. and not a bad thing.
Sam, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim.
I hope I get to see the garden soon.
Oh, so do I. So do I. I hope somebody sees it. I'll be posting lots of pictures, so don't worry.